Japanese drive a deep wedge into the British lines, forcing them to retreat. Soon, the entire city is within the range of the Japanese artillery. Within 5 days, the Japanese capture the reservoirs and cut off the city's water supply.
General Yamashita wanted to take the city of Singapore without a fight because he knew that his troops were inferior in number to the defenders. And so the first thing they did was have planes fly over that dropped literally boxes that contained appeals to surrender, basically saying there's no reason to have a battle in which we're going to kill a lot of civilians. You should give up to save the women and children that are in the city. If you don't, I will order an annihilation attack on the city of Singapore. 3 days later, a warning, you'd better come to meet me to talk about surrender terms, or else.
Churchill orders his generals to defend Singapore to the death. Surrender, he says, is out of the question.
We've never had enough time to be worried or anything like that. No sooner got there and there was, walls in the firing line, but it only lasted for a couple of days. I think it took about 5 days for a car to come from the top of Malaya to Singapore, and the Japs done it in 3.
Under attack for several days, the British are finally beginning to realize the depth of Japanese penetration into their defenses.
All the guns, etc., were pointing out to sea, and the Japs come in the back, and therefore they couldn't reverse the guns. The trouble was they were being cut off, you see. Actually, as we were supposed to be fighting the front line, another wave came to the back of the troops, and actually they had no chance at all.
Finally, the British commanders agree that with the water supply nearly gone, short on food, gasoline, and their troops exhausted, counterattack is impossible.
Everything, all the service and everything was on the Malayan mainland. And that's one reason they were cut off for water and everything the people were. But when it stopped, actually it was glad it was over in one way, because it was over and done with.
It's got to be one of the most unusual encounters ever. It was held in a bank, and an old-fashioned bank, they had a cage like for the tellers to be in, where people had the money. They met inside this cage to talk and negotiate the surrender. General Percival thought he could buy a little time, and Yamashita just wouldn't hear that. You got to surrender. You can have only 1,000 men who have any kind of arms. You've got to surrender as hostages to maintaining the terms of the surrender. The Governor General of Singapore, plus all of the high command of the British Armed Forces. General Yamashita must have regarded this whole operation as a colossal gamble. The British have a superior number of troops. He doesn't. He's low on ammunition. Can he make this face-to-face encounter work? And he did.
Yamashita tells Percival to say nothing except yes or no. The answer is yes. On February 15th, 1942, Singapore falls to the Japanese.
It's 130,000 prisoners of war. A significant number of them were sent north as forced laborers to help build the railway from Thailand into Burma, the infamous bridge on the River Kwai. They linger in memory in Australia because of the belief there that the British High Command didn't do all that it could have done to keep them from becoming prisoners.
Well, I was a bit concerned what would happen, and everything for the future. Of course, your parents, too, that's what you think about most. We just took it for granted as prisoners of war, and that was it. You can expect anything,
Instead of the traditional victory parade, Yamashita orders his men to pass through the city in silence, carrying boxes containing ashes of the dead.
I think the best way to sum up what the victory at Singapore meant to the Japanese people, army, everybody involved, is the name they gave the city. When they captured the city, they renamed it Shonan. Sho is the character, the first syllable for the first part of the emperor's formal name, Showa. It means enlightened. Nan is the word for south. So this was the Japanese liberators coming to enlighten and free the city of Singapore from its British colonial oppressors. It means that the Japanese have a base of operations from which they can conduct all kinds of operations, intelligence operations, military operations, naval operations in Southeast Asia. It's a sense, again, of tremendous pride to have done this, a terrific boost to morale at home.
The campaign to take Malaya and Singapore will cost the Japanese over 3,500 dead and over 6,000 wounded. The 130,000 prisoners of war would be treated with appalling cruelty and inhumanity by their captors, a constant reminder of the fall of Singapore. The British have spent nearly 20 years building the fortress of Singapore. The Japanese are able to conquer it in 70 days. At this point, it looks like the Japanese are assured of victory in the war. But the British fighting spirit will be buoyed in the coming months by the rebuilt American Navy and a push to retake the Pacific.